the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Talking Catholic. I'm Jen Mauro, and with me, as always, is Mike Walsh. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Jen. We are recording on Zoom because it's a work-from-home Friday. And folks, if you happen to hear what sounds like birds in the background or something like that, it's because it is a beautiful, almost spring-like, summer-like day, and I'm sitting on my front porch recording a Zoom. I am very happy right now.
Well, the fact that you can sit on your front porch and it's not 107 is pretty impressive after the last few weeks we've had.
Yes, I woke up this morning, threw open all of the windows, got the smell of to do my best at getting the smell of dog out of my house. We have our own dog, but we were watching my sister-in-law's dog as well while they were on vacation in Bermuda, and so now it smells like double dog. So I threw all my bedding in the washer this morning. Did my best to get that, and I don't mind the smell of dog. I don't have a problem with that. I don't mind the smell of my own dog. The smell of other people's dog was slightly less enjoyable.
You know, as a dog person, when you walk into somebody's house that's a cat person, can you smell the difference? Since we're talking about smells of pets,
depends on what part of the cat you smell. It's very much dependent upon where the litter box is.
Yeah. I'm very conscious of that as a cat person in a house of 3 cats. I am always asking for a smell check of my house.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not sure I have any friends that have cats. That's usually one of the things I look into and then decide whether I want to be friends with them or not. If they don't have cats, then we can be friends. If they have cats, then it's a different story. But, whatever. Coworkers, I can't do anything about, so that's fine.
You don't ask that when you hire new people?
No, apparently you're not allowed. So I can't get invested in that part of your personal life. So, but anyway, I'm thoroughly enjoying plan to thoroughly enjoy these last 3 weeks of August, which actually, I'll be honest with you, usually fill me with dread, but only because I think back to, this is the time of year where we would be gearing up for our week away football camp in high school. And that was I'm pretty sure that was the least fun experience of my life, was going away to football camp, because that was a lot of hard labor at football camp for the week. That was before, they knew you weren't allowed to restrict water usage and things of that nature, and passing out during practice was not what you wanted to do. So yeah, I still get this sort of visceral reaction as I can smell, because August has a different smell than the rest of the month. I can kind of smell it as we're coming into September. So I still get that existential dread, even though I haven't played, high school football in almost 30 years.
Wow. Growing up in Texas, August was Six Flags Great Adventure time. Like we had season passes, so we're always at Six Flags. But it gets so hot in Texas that the asphalt would melt. So the smell of August makes me think of asphalt, because when you come home, you have to take your shoes off at the door, or you would track asphalt into the house.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. This is a very smell-heavy podcast already.
I've often said if we could do radio properly, it would have there'd be a smell technique to it.
Yeah.
Because actually that's your olfactory senses are amongst the strongest with bringing back memories. That's why literally the smell of August brings me right back to football camp, 1987 through 1989.
Well, I'm glad we don't have smell radio for this, since all we've talked about is cats, dogs, maybe the sweat, and astronaut. So
that is true.
You're welcome, listeners. But go ahead.
There are a bunch of great things coming up, though. And actually, speaking of schools, before I even talk about the other two things, speaking of schools, we are getting closer to school starting. So if you are a parent, or someone who is parenting some children who may be looking for something new in their lives, or haven't been to school yet and are looking for a place to go, and you live in the South Jersey area, I encourage you to go to southjerseycatholicschools.org and learn more about what the schools are available for you. You know, there's a lot of changes going on in the education system nowadays. And the one things you can say about our Catholic schools are they're rock solid, steeped in tradition. They teach from the heart. They care about the whole body of the student, soul, their spirituality, their mental needs, their physical needs. So Catholic schools are a great place to go. So I would encourage you, and we'll be having a Catholic schools podcast in a couple of weeks. But I wanted to kind of get that out there now, since we're in mid-August. By all means, if you're looking for a change or looking for your first school, check out a Catholic school. SouthJerseyCatholicSchools.org. The gift of a lifetime.
And we'll be having a whole back to school issue of the Catholic Star Herald coming up August 26th. So just to coincide with the Back to School Talking Catholic podcast. So exciting stuff coming up for September. But before that, we have exciting stuff coming up on the weekend and Monday. You want to tell our listeners more about that, Mr. Walsh?
Well, it's one of my favorite weekends of the year, and not just because it's my wedding anniversary, where I get to spend so little time with my actual wife. It is the Feast of the Assumption weekend, the vigil being on Sunday, August 14th, and the feast day being on the 15th. And if you live in the shore area, many of your shore parishes will be having what's referred to as Wedding of the Sea ceremonies, celebrations, where after Mass, the parish will process to the sea, and the local pastor will, depending on how they choose to do it, there's a couple different ways, will bless the union of the Atlantic Ocean to the communities of the Jersey Shore. And it's a beautiful old Italian tradition that was brought over to our shores many years ago by Italian immigrants, and has over the years been adopted by most of the shore communities. Now, most notably are the two that the bishop goes to. During the vigil Mass on Sunday night, he will be in Wildwood at 4:30 for the Feast of the Assumption Mass, Vigil Mass, and then processing to the shore or to the beach rather, to the ocean in Wildwood. And that's always that may actually be my fondest of all of them, because it has a sort of relaxed nature to it. It's a Saturday, or it's a vigil one, so it's always during golden hour. Fantastic photographs aplenty. The seminarians are all there looking adorable, and then Bishop gets into the Wildwood lifeboat with some Wildwood lifeguards and rows out into the sea across the breakers. Every year, I hope that one of those really hits it hard and he goes flying, and I captured it as a photograph and win an award for it. Hasn't happened yet. I've won an award for it, but he hasn't gone flying yet. But he goes out there. I have to imagine this year, as a matter of fact, he'll probably be inviting our guest on, because that often happens, where he brings his priest secretary with him in the boat. So fingers crossed that that's the case. And then he goes out and blesses the ocean, throws a ring of flowers in the ocean, and then comes back. And then everybody dives in with little bottles to get their recently blessed water. And then the next day, he'll do the same thing in Atlantic City after the noon Mass at St. Nicholas of Tolentine Church, and then process to the sea. And in many years, the mayor of Atlantic City has gone out with him. So sometimes holding on to the bishop for dear life.
So I'm looking forward to going, because I've been to the Atlantic City procession, but not the Wildwood. So it'll be my first time at the Wildwood procession. And, one thing I've always enjoyed living on the East Coast is that, is what you were talking about, is the collecting of the water after the water's been blessed. Because, growing up in a landlocked state, when I came to the East Coast, that was quite a different experience for me. So it's not totally landlocked. Not totally landlocked. I just got to Texas, but to get all the way down to the south of Texas is an 8-hour drive from where I live. Okay. So I consider that
essentially landlocked.
Yeah.
There you go.
And anyway, so geography, another skill of journalism, math and geography.
Right.
Anyway, so I always loved seeing that and participating in that as well as collecting the seawater, the holy, recently blessed holy water. Stop laughing at me.
I can't help it. I'm just so happy you said Texas is landlocked because I have a feeling that'll never go away.
It's landlocked to me. I just told you about melting asphalt, and it's 8 hours to get to the nearest ocean, and that's the Gulf of Mexico. So
I was good. I am so buying you a globe very shortly. This is awesome. I'm so excited.
The irony
this
is
Friday just keeps getting better and better.
The irony is that I love global maps. I love them. So anyway.
But yes, it is. It's a great weekend, and it's one people should come to, and it's a blast, and it's a lot of fun. And when you're finished up, you hit the boardwalks when you're done, and kind of enjoy the shore area. But it's a lot of fun. It's also, the Feast of the Assumption Mass is always fun because it's very Marian in nature, obviously, and it's that really speaks to a lot of people. Just a great weekend when it's during the weekend.
Yeah, good way. And then coming up after that, about a week later, we'll have on August 23rd the Diocesan Holy Hour, which I am also looking forward to. That's part of the 3-year Eucharistic revival. This part is the diocese, another step in the diocese endeavor. First, starting off with the June 18th procession, which we all loved, which was amazing. Over 1,000 people on the Atlantic City Boardwalk. And we're hoping for a good turnout at the Holy Hour. So that'll be from 7 to 8 p.m. at Sacred Heart Church in Vineland, where people are just encouraged to come, spend some time before the Eucharist and adoration, and there'll be music and fellowship afterward.
Yeah, it's going to be a great day or a great evening. I will unfortunately not be able to be there. I will be on a rare vacation. So, everybody else, come on down and tell everybody that you see how much you miss me. Also, if your local diocese or your, there's not much going on right now on a parish level, so don't be too unnerved if you haven't seen a lot of parish Eucharistic revival work or events yet. That actually happens next year, starting in next summer. But if you haven't seen anything going on in your diocese yet, by all means, and you don't live in the Camden Diocese where we're so proactive in these things, make sure you are, call up the bishop's office, call up whoever heads up, the family and life and things like that, and say, hey, I hear the Eucharistic revival is going on. And if that doesn't work, go to the Eucharistic Revival has their own dedicated webpage. I think it's just eucharisticrevival.org. And that's the national page. And you can go there and learn more about it. It's a great opportunity for us to help people get educated on what the Eucharist really is. It is not a symbol for anything. It is quite literally the reality of Christ amongst us. So, it's a very important part of our faith, and one that unfortunately a lot of Catholics aren't particularly knowledgeable about right now. And we would like to do our best to help educate them.
And, another good thing is if there's nothing going on or that you don't see anything going on right now in your diocese, I'm sure that diocese could use some volunteers to help get that ball moving or keep on rolling. So, everybody's got a skill or education to pass along. So think about volunteering at your parish or diocese and see what you can do to help.
And if any of our fellow dioceses want to steal any of our ideas, I can tell you already we have almost 16 Eucharist talks put together in English. They'll be in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and I think Korean too. We'll have them in 4 languages. So we're getting together with a lot of our local priests who are going to be able to help people to understand the presentations throughout the diocese on what the Eucharist is. So should be fun.
Well, speaking
and
of
then
priests,
we're going to have. Well, hold on. And then we're going to have teaching classes about what makes the Mass the Mass. That's the other thing that's kind of cool, too, is we're going to go right back to the beginning and help people understand all that stuff they see on a Sunday. There's a reason for all of it. Like they didn't put that stuff together by accident. There's actually a purpose to all of it. And there are words that are used to describe it, which most of us have never heard before. And I've been working in a Catholic diocese for 7 years, and I've been looking at some of the materials. And I just said something to the Vicar General the other day. I have never heard of this word before. So, Lots to learn.
Good. Well, you should. I have nothing else to say on that.
That's what we call a professional transition right there.
You know what? Yeah. So I was just thinking about our guest and the fact that if you did come to the Blessing of the Sea on Sunday in Wildwood or Monday in Atlantic City, you would see Mike Walsh, myself, and our guest, Father Joshua Nevitt. So welcome, Father Josh.
Thank you. It's good to be back on the Talking Catholic podcast.
Well, we're happy to have you. It's my first podcast with you, and especially now that you have some new roles in the diocese. So you are now the priest secretary to the bishop, associate director of vocations, and the vice chancellor starting in July. Is that correct?
That is all very correct. As of July 1st, I have all three of those titles that you just so eloquently said, Jen.
You know what I'm really excited is that I'm getting to know you better already in the last 4 weeks, and this is going to be fun. I'm excited that you're on this side of the diocese.
And Father Josh, you are new to those roles, but you're certainly not new to the diocese. You're if someone looks at you and they'll see this photograph, they're going to go, "Wow, he's a very youthful priest," and you are, in fact, a very youthful priest. You've been, matter of fact, you were ordained in my time here, and I've only been here 7 years, so you're definitely on the young side. But you are well known. You were the director of Catholic Identity at Holy Spirit High School in emceeing, right outside of Atlantic City, and you were the parochial vicar at the parish whose name I never remember correctly.
St. Elizabeth Ann Seton.
Thank you, because the one right next to it is St. Catherine Drexel, and for whatever reason, I can't keep those two separated.
Two great American saints down by the shore.
That's right. So, and as we've said before, he has been on the podcast before. You were on once with Carrie Janice and I, and you were on a second time talking schools as the Catholic Identity Director with Marianella and I. But this is Jen's first time. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is every time the bishop has a priest secretary. Actually, let me rephrase that. Every time the bishop celebrates Mass, every single time, I get a question from someone in the parish, because we'll usually do it in a parish, and somebody in the parish saying, "Who's that young seminarian who was working with Bishop the whole time?" And then I always have to say to them, that is not a young seminarian. That is Bishop's priest secretary, who is always dressed in cassock and surplice and looks like a seminarian. Now, when it was Father Romano 7 years ago, he a perpetually youthful young man, but also smaller of stature. So you can understand why people would think he was a seminarian. After that, it was Father Jason Rocks, who nobody should ever confuse with being a seminarian, because he's a person of advanced age now. But you being on the younger side, I had concerns that people would think that you were merely a seminarian, and in fact, at this point, grizzled young priest.
Grizzled.
Wow.
So
that's
Father,
quite the description there. Grizzled.
So you have a multifaceted job that you've had now for about a year and a half. What does the priest secretary do for the bishop?
I've had the job for about a month and a half. I think you said a year and a half.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry,
yeah.
Month and a half. My apologies.
But what does the priest secretary do? I'm learning the role as it goes along. Probably the most well-known part of it is I'm the bishop's master of ceremonies, his MC at these masses. So I dressing the cassock and surplice, and the role of the master of ceremonies at any mass is just to make sure it all goes smoothly, that the altar servers know what they're doing, that the bishop's mitre goes on at the right time, that he's holding his crozier at the right time. And it's an important role to make these liturgies with the high priest of the diocese. The bishop is the high priest of the diocese, to make them go smoothly. Sometimes parishes, altar servers, they get a little nervous. The bishop's here. And my job is to say, don't be nervous. It's all going to go okay. And if things mess up, it's my fault. I get to take
So that probably takes a lot of pressure off, actually.
Exactly. But that's the most well-known role. There's other roles. The word secretary is a great description of it. Is I help the bishop to maintain his calendar and to maintain correspondence. I support him in his ministry to the diocese. This is it's a biblical role. St. Paul talks about how Timothy and others helped him in his ministry. They helped him as he went around and traveled and preached the gospel. I've found a lot of inspiration in that, taking on this role and helping our own successor of the apostles here in the Camden Diocese to do his job.
I've never thought about that in the biblical sense as well. Like whenever I've seen the Master of Ceremonies, I'm always just thinking, oh, thank goodness there's someone else there, and I'm not even an altar server. And I don't know why, but when I'm around the bishop in a like when he's going to celebrate Mass, I get nervous for the bishop. Like, I hope everything goes okay. So when I see you guys, brings me peace. I guess that's weird. I don't know, but I really like that you put that in the biblical context as well.
So the priest secretary is an important role and a very visible role. But there's something that Bishop Sullivan has really been pushing in his time here, has been the role of vocations. Mm-hmm. We've in the past, we had a great vocations director, once again, Father Romano. It's not uncommon for the priest secretary to also be the vocations director. We currently have Father Adam Chehesky, who has been outstanding in his 2 years here as the vocations director. But Bishop Sullivan brought you in to be the assistant director for vocations. And in that regard, how will you be supporting our very necessary need for vocations?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting more into that role as well. The associate vocations director, we haven't had one of those in our diocese in a while. And Father Adam, who's the vocations director, has done great work. He also just became the rector of our cathedral. So that's a lot of work for him. My side as bishop secretary, I get to travel a lot across the diocese with the bishop. I get to go to the Catholic schools. I get to go to confirmations. I get to meet young men from across the diocese. And it's amazing. Every parish has, those great group of altar servers that, the priest loves when they serve because they do a great job. And when the bishop comes, the priest grabs them and puts them on the altar because they know they're going to do a great job. And then I get to see these young men and ask them, have you ever thought about becoming a priest? Have you, what do you want to do with your life? It's a great combination of these two roles that as we're traveling and I'm going across the diocese, it's bringing a youthful priest presence there. And then I'll help facilitate some of these discerners. Men in high school and college, maybe after college too, that are thinking about becoming a priest and they just don't know what the next steps are. Once they enter the seminary, I can pass them off to Father Adam and he'll take good care of them. But I don't want to use the word recruiting because it's not recruiting in that sense, but it's discerning that side of things. That's going to fall to me as well. Bishop really wants me to be involved in the diocesan high schools too. So we're still not sure how that's going to work. Like I said, we haven't had an associate director of vocations in a while. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think there's a lot of leeway to do some good work in that.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, and this is something that I know Bishop has written about and something I've certainly put in a lot of our materials over the years, which is the importance of asking the question, have you ever thought about becoming a priest? I think that there are a lot of people out there, a lot of men out there that are not priests today because they may have had the calling, but no one ever said anything to them. And we've certainly had this conversation on the podcast many times, most notably with Father Romano. about how much he resisted the calling to become a priest in his early years. And it's actually a common refrain in many of the conversations we had with priests here. That in those early years, they did everything they could to kind of push it behind, but there would be someone kind of there in their life that would kind of remind them of it every now and again. So you being there as a pleasant, joyful young priest, so happy in relishing his job and his role in the world, you're going to make a great advocate for the priesthood.
Yeah, thanks. It's interesting as I have taken on this role. I've been doing a lot of reading and studying about vocations work. Believe it or not, there's a lot of materials printed out there. And one of the interesting things to me is that the vast majority of seminarians right now and priests being ordained right now, something like 80% of them were personally asked by a priest in their life to consider the priesthood. That's pretty amazing. And the author of this little booklet that I found that statistic in, he was writing, he said, just like the priest, we, through our words, we speak the words of Jesus in absolution, in the Eucharist, when we say, this is my body, this is my blood. Through our words, we can call men to the priesthood. And that's the voice of Jesus speaking through us to them. It's really a beautiful and sacred conversation to have and to ask and invite. Jesus did the same thing. He said, come follow me, come and see. As a vocations director, I get to do that as well.
Father, when you were a young man discerning, was that something that was available to you at other priests that were inviting you, or maybe you were an altar server at the time and encountered a priest secretary?
Yeah, a priest secretary, no. When I was in high school, when I was discerning, Bishop Galante was our bishop, and he didn't have a priest secretary. But our diocese at the time had a great diocesan-wide youth ministry program. We still do, but there were a lot of retreats and youth congresses and stuff. I know some of that's been on hold the last few years for COVID, and they're redoing it. Next week is the Summer in the City program. I did Summer in the City when I was in high school. And so they always had these young priests coming on it. And there were these handful of young priests that would be there and just provided a great inspiration to me. It was at one of those retreats at a vocations talk that one of the priests was speaking. And that was the first time I started thinking about becoming a priest. So it was through his voice that I heard the voice of Jesus.
Speaking about Summer in the City, like you say, it is coming up in the next week. For those who don't know, Summer in the City is a youth immersion summer social service week, where there's a lot of prayer and opportunities to interact with the community. And it's always in Atlantic City, or at least it is now. And one of the things I always also think is good is that the kids work with the CFR sisters down in Atlantic City. Mm-hmm. So, whether you're a young man or a young woman, you're getting either a priest or a sister's influence to think about vocations.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's, I remember as a seminarian, we would go once a year into the high schools. Usually we were on winter break for Vocations Day, and Father Romano was the vocations director at the time. And he would always say, you guys see married couples, the vocation of marriage every day. You see it in your parents, you see it in your grandparents, your teachers who are all living that vocation. He said, but we don't always see religious vocations, the priestly vocations, the vocations to religious life as a sister. And that's why we had those days once a year to come into the school and just to be there, to be present, to tell our stories, because you never knew who you were going to reach through that. Mm-hmm. That'll be part of what I'll do as associate vocation director, is organize those days, those high school vocations days.
Good. Well, Catholic Star Herald's looking forward to covering them.
That's great.
I have to imagine your time at Holy Spirit High School as a Catholic identity director is probably going to help you in that. You had an opportunity to spend so much time with young people and really get to understand what makes them tick. Are you going to miss your time at Holy Spirit High School?
Oh, I most certainly will. I loved my first assignment. Every priest loves his first assignment. And I loved having the opportunity to be in a high school. But Mike, I think just like you said, you'd imagine that work is going to help me in this work. I think Bishop Sullivan imagined it first, because he mentioned that to me when he was giving me this assignment. And he said he wanted me working with the high schools still. So I'm still going to be part of the Holy Spirit community for that reason. I'll be down at that school and helping young men who I know very well there discern the priesthood, if that might be God's call for them. I'm looking forward to getting into the other schools, getting to know those communities as well, and building up a culture of vocations there, a culture where it's normal really to be Catholic. It's normal to think about becoming a priest, and something exciting and to be celebrated when a young man from one of our diocesan schools enters the seminary. I went to a public school, by the way, so I'm not saying that only Catholic school students become priests, but God calls men to the priesthood from all walks of life, and some of them are sitting in our Catholic schools, and I can go there. I'm not allowed into the public high schools.
We were talking about Catholic education, and Mike was speaking earlier about, back to school around the corner. Do you think there's, serving in a Catholic high school, do you think there is a school culture that is unique to Catholic schools, like the friendships, the atmospheres that are different than a public school, maybe?
I think, of course, there's going to be, and even my time at Holy Spirit taught me very quickly that each of our schools have different atmospheres within them. I loved being a Spartan and standing on the sidelines and cheering for the blue and gold. But I think so. I mean, each of our schools has a priest assigned to them, director of Catholic identity assigned there. In 3 of our high schools, they're brand new, newly ordained priests that are going to be starting out as the directors of Catholic identity. So just having a priest there. Some of our schools still have religious sisters teaching at them. All of our schools, I believe, have chapels in them with the Blessed Sacrament as we're going through the Eucharistic revival. I mean, Jesus is there physically present in the school, in the Eucharist. That has to change the culture of the school one way or another. That does set our schools apart from other schools, even private religious schools. It sets our Catholic schools apart there. And you know what? It creates a space for a young person to hear God's call for their life, God's vocation. The word vocation means calling, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that call is to the priesthood or religious life, or that call is to marriage and to serve God, maybe as a teacher or as a doctor or whatever, it's there that our young people in these Catholic schools, they begin to see themselves as God sees them. For some of them, they'll see that means priesthood, and for those men, that's my job to go and find them. For others, they'll have the plan that God has in their life.
Talking about some other changes in your life, you were in parish life for several years, and I know that's I believe I've been told by every priest I've ever known that's all they ever wanted was life in a parish where they could work with people on a regular basis. Yours is altered now a bit. You're on the administrative side in the chancery most of the time now, and you're living with Bishop and his residence. So you don't have that same parish connection. I'm curious, what are you going to miss from your time? I know you're going to be in all the parishes now, so you'll definitely still have lots of parish life. But that day-to-day parish life, what do you think you're going to miss from it?
I think it's being part of people's daily lives, as you say, day to day. You see the same people every week. You say, have a great week, and they say thanks. And a week later, you get to say, did you have a great week? As they're coming into Mass. Being in a high school, I think most of our parishes, except for a few who might go to daily Mass, you see your parishioners about once a week. Being in a high school, you saw your students day in, day out. And I was a teacher at the school as well as the chaplain. So I was there every day, to see how a student was doing, to see if they're happy or sad. You can read their faces on that. So that's different. It's different people being around. It's a little bit of a smaller community, especially, a decent sized parish, a decent sized school. Now, I see the same people day in, day out. Mike, you and Jen, when you come across the street to our building, I get to see you. Dolores,
our smiling faces.
Yep, Dolores and Anna and Susan, who you had on a couple weeks ago. I get to see them daily and have lunch with them and joke around the lunch table with them. So it's different people. It's a little bit of a smaller community. But in that case, we're working together. You're not guiding them the same way you might guide parishioners or guide students.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, though. I believe Jen would like you to start guiding me, if at all possible, teaching me how to be more pleasant at the very least.
I will say, when Father Josh just said now, 2 smiling faces when we come to visit him, I think only one of those faces is smiling when we come to visit him. Just saying. So, and I want to also thank Father Nevitt for coming. We were saying you have to come across the street. You came across the street to the pastoral center and came and met, all the different departments that are working on that side of the chantry. So thank you for your visit, because the Catholic Star Herald appreciated it. I can speak on our behalf anyway.
I did enjoy that. It's amazing because I learned stuff going over there. I learned that there are people who work for the diocese and do jobs for the diocese that I didn't even know diocese had need of. Especially Jen at the Star Herald, some of the designers and everything. And I thought, I didn't know that we needed this, on a diocesan level, but we do. And it's all of the behind the scenes, like you just said, that make it work.
Well, thank you. You're invited over anytime. Sorry,
They have a lot of snacks, so they'll probably invite you over for whenever we have baked goods, Father. So careful about putting on that weight.
That's Mike. Do you bake the goods at all? Because I know you're a baker.
I am, and I do from time to time, though I have to admit it has been a couple of months since I've done any good baking. I've been kicking around the idea of doing stuff, but this past couple of weeks, it was just too hot. I was like, I am not baking right now. So we'll wait till the fall and all the pumpkin spice starts appearing, and I'll make sure I bake a few pumpkin spice things. You were mentioning all the professional people that we have, and it's just a little good reminder for our listeners that that is true. The diocese is a professional organization. We actually have very talented, very well-educated, very well-meaning, very surprisingly kind people who are working to do all the things that are required to keep a very large organization running. And in our case, a very professional newspaper requires professional talent. So we have a lot of good people on hand. Our most recent retirees and the most recent people we've had join us, which Jen would be one of the most recent joiners. Although she's been here now 14 months, I think.
Yeah, going on 14.
Yeah.
Going on 14.
She's been here, and she took it upon herself to move to the diocese all on her own because she wanted to be with us as much as she could. God bless her. That's Father, I think you'll come to learn as you work in the diocesan offices, much like yourself, we like sacrifice around here. We're big proponents of it.
That's true. Mike did say,
you really are.
You have said a few times that, what sacrifices will be asked of you, but some are not asked of you, and you just feel called to do it.
That's right. Because the people we work with and work for are such good human beings. It's really, I mean, I've said this on numerous podcasts. It's really irritating, but they are wonderful humans. You know, sometimes it's a struggle for me to hate them sometimes, but I mean, I accomplish it, but it's not easy. They are such kind people looking out for everyone's best interests. So welcome to the crew, Father.
Thank you. You know, I as I've met new people, a lot of people I've known for a few years, especially as a seminarian. I've been a priest 4 years, but I was a seminarian 9 years. So you do get to know a lot of good people around the diocese, and it's a lot of fun working with them now.
Mm-hmm.
Father, I know that it's still rather new in your new role, but talking about parish life as well. How do you think that this administration phase of your ministry will help in future parish life?
Oh, that's a great question.
I'll tell you exactly how it's going to help him. He's going to know the extension number of everyone he needs to call to complain to when we screw up. That's what
I'm having my number rerouted to Mike's number.
Do you know, Jen, I think the diocesan offices, the chancery offices, we don't exist for ourselves. We exist to support the parishes, to support the priests, to support the lay ministers and parishes, and then they exist to support the lay faithful. So, every priest, you're ordained for parish life. That's why we're ordained. I hope to, I know that I'll be back in parish life. Not just I hope, but I know I'll be back there after this assignment. And so I'll know that connection to say, how can what can I do as the priest in the parish? And then where do I need the diocese to support me to do these roles? Because that's why we're here. We're here to support the priests. We're here to support the parishes and the lay ministry for the building up of the church. So I think, it's showing me the other side of things. It's showing me, as someone in the parish, every once in a while, I would have to call Dolores or Anna or Susan or the other people who work at the diocese. Now I see them. Now there's a face behind them. There's a story behind them, their life, their family. Going back to a parish, it's bringing that with me to know who you're talking to up in Camden.
And the people you're going to get to know in the parishes when you travel with Bishop.
Yeah, exactly. I'll end up at a parish and hopefully they'll say, oh, we remember when you came with Bishop Sullivan. We always like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they won't say anything else.
Good point. I know that you're actually about to encounter the most difficult part of your job, which is you're going to see so many faces and so many names, and you're going to be so recognizable. People are going to remember you immediately, and you will have difficulty from time to time remembering what that person's name was that was helping you out at that one parish. And I know this for a fact because your predecessors, that was always the tricky part as well. And quite frankly, the tricky part for me too. So don't be too hard on yourself if you don't remember everybody you meet after the first time you go to a new parish father.
Oh, it's so true. And who's very good at remembering people is Bishop Sullivan. And he'll mention someone, or even in the last month and a half I've had this job, someone will send him a note or something. He'll say, oh, I remember them and they're from here and they did that. And back in 2013, when I came to the diocese, this happened. He's so good at that. So it's been, very inspiring to see him do that.
What I always like is when I'm on assignment and I meet a young, especially I've encountered this a lot when I'm doing youth ministry articles, and I'll talk to a young man or woman who met Bishop because they came out to confirmation, and they remember to this day what he said to them, or how they influenced them, and then vice versa. Like I've run into a bishop before and said, "Who was at so and so, school, and somebody remembered you." And like you're saying, Father, he remembers those conversations.
Yep.
That must be a divine grace that must be bestowed on bishops.
It might be. He has some great stories. You should have Bishop on the podcast at some point. I know he's been recognized on the Ocean City Boardwalk before. restaurants he can't always go into incognito because everyone knows him.
Yeah. He's good that way. And yes, someday we will have him on the podcast. It is getting crazy at this point that now every single person in the chancery has been on the podcast except for the bishop. I could see where my job may be on the line at some point soon if I don't have him on. But I've explained this to 100 times. He has been on the podcast, sort of. Donna Ottaviano Britt, good friend in the pastoral department, had one of the truly best interviews I've ever heard with Bishop Sullivan during the pandemic, where they literally had a fireside chat. They were sitting beside the fire at his residence, and they had an hour-long conversation, and we recorded it for video, but it was so good I asked if I could put it up on the podcast. And so it's always available for you. But yes, that is true. He has not been properly grilled by myself, Jen, Carrie, though he has been grilled by Marianella. Marianella and Jose had them on their Compartiendo Tu Don YouTube show about 2 years ago, and it was all in Spanish. But as far as I can tell, it was a really good interview. I didn't hear any cursing. It's cursing in the midst of it. So he has been. But we will have him on, I promise.
Well, Mike, like I said, I helped him keep his calendar. So if you want him on, just let me know. I can add it to it.
He's a busy, that's the problem. I've never had him on before. Well, actually, there's a couple of reasons. One, I will not say out loud, but the other one is because I do know how busy it is. And I know how busy he is. And quite frankly, I don't want to be a bother to him. Much like yourself, Father, I am in service to the bishop. I do not require the bishop. So if my podcast can be of service to him or his successors, they are always welcome to come on at a moment's notice. And in any other channel that we provide, I will love to have them there. But I feel that the bishop and I share some personality traits, and sometimes you just don't want to be in front of a microphone. So I'm not going to make him do it. Plus, he's a consummate writer. He really is. He's an excellent writer.
Yeah.
And he writes a regular column for us. And, his words are always out there. So I always felt like it wasn't necessarily a high priority to have him on the podcast, because learning his thoughts is not difficult. All you have to do is go to Bishop Sullivan's page on the Catholic Star Herald, and you get every single one of his columns. And they're all fantastic. Right, Jen?
They are. I was just thinking about the last one, actually. Yeah. You always catch me like in a moment of silence, and you're like, right? And I'm always like, I was just thinking about, because like you'll say something and I go down this, like, my mind goes down this rabbit hole. But you take my silence to mean, are you paying attention? But you're right. I'm just teasing. But yeah, no. You know what I like about Bishop Sullivan's writing style is that it's very personal, personable, and personal. And, especially like when he wrote about 9/11 or when he did his graduation speeches, I always feel like I'm learning something, but in a very conversational way.
Yeah. And we should say that it's his award-winning column style.
Yes, it is.
By the way.
And I'm thinking, Father, you might be getting a little bit more of that now that you are residing with the bishop. Is that correct in your new role?
It's true. Bishop Sullivan since he came to the diocese, he's wanted to get to know the priests of the diocese very well. From the better part of the year, he has priests at his residence every Monday night for dinner. And I've been invited to that a number of times. He likes having priests over. At one point I was here, and one of the more seasoned priests of the diocese, retired priests of the diocese, said to me, he said, when I was your age, we would talk to the bishop maybe once a year, let alone think about sitting at his dinner table. So he said the fact that Bishop Sullivan has been so present to the priest, we all feel like we know him well. And living here now, I see him day in and day out, and in the busy moments, but also in the moments of life. And he's the bishop. He's quote unquote famous within our diocese, but first and foremost, he's a priest. He's a priest who loves Jesus. He's a priest who loves serving the people. And as a young priest, it's always an inspiration to be with more seasoned priests, more experienced priests who have that life and that history of ministry, to learn from them, to learn their experiences. Any of our young priests, you can ask them. They love going and talking to the retired priests. They love talking to priests about their older priests about their time in ministry. And the same is true with Bishop Sullivan. He has great stories from New York, from Camden. And they're a lot of fun to listen to. He's fun to be around and to live with.
Do you find yourself wanting to like tap into that institutional knowledge, but also like not bug him? just curious.
You know what? No. I think just because, as you know, I enjoy, well, maybe a little, I think just like maybe, a kid might like to listen to their grandparents and stories about their family history. Our family is the Diocese of Camden. We have a very rich history going back to when the diocese was founded in 1937. So it's great to hear those stories. Actually, sometimes Bishop Sullivan doesn't have all of the stories, because he's only been here for so long, but it's other priests, Father Hughes, who I live with as well. He has a lot of good stories about the diocese. Some of the older priests, the secretaries in the chancery office, I know you had them on a couple weeks ago, and I learned things listening to that podcast.
In the time I've been here, that's actually been perhaps the greatest gift, is working for, I feel like there's often and it's just the nature of life. This is nothing, intentional, that sometimes there's a chasm between parish life and diocesan life, and just the nature of how organizations work, and people in the parishes won't necessarily understand why a diocese makes the decisions that it makes. But having basically lived the diocese for the last 7 years, the one thing with my time is up here, whether they ask me out or I leave on my own, is that I'll now have a much better understanding of why dioceses make those decisions. And oftentimes they are decisions made for the future. What's going to happen 5 or 10 years down the road? I probably should have brought this up earlier, but there was a decree in the Diocese of Camden that was published this week about a change in mass schedules based on how many priests are present or assigned to a parish. And I know it'll cause some discomfort because mass schedules will have to be changed to accomplish it. But it's important because Bishop Sullivan understood that, how many priests we have in our parishes now is likely not going to be what they are in 5 or 10 years, and we need to be prepared for that. So if we need to reduce the number of parishes, that needs to happen. And he knew that some pastors would have difficulty with that because the people would want more parishes, even though we don't have the resources for that. And he said, well, then let me take it out of your hands and I'll make this decree. We'll do it this way. And I think that was an incredible gift to future members of the clergy, that, they won't be over encumbered. Now, hopefully, God willing, Father Josh, you'll do your job well, and we'll have 50 new priests, within the next 10 years. But, just in case that doesn't work out, I'm glad he's got a plan for the future.
Keep praying, Mike.
Just in case. He did give you a little bit of a window there.
Exactly.
A little bit of wiggle room.
Just in case. And some of it's on Father Adam Jeheski. He's got to do his share too. But between the two of you, I'm confident. Maybe not 50, but I'm betting on 20 in the next 10 years. So I'll be happy with that. Well, Father Josh, thank you very much for joining us today. This was wonderful as always, and we always love having you on. And you're welcome back anytime. And if the bishop asks, yes, he can come on the podcast whenever he has a minute. We'd love to have him. Jen's been wanting to take a crack at him for forever. So
that's true. I wouldn't use those words. Please don't use those words with the bishop. But yes, I have very much wanted to have Bishop on the podcast.
All right. I'll let him know.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll be back again next week. Talk to you later.